Hi guys, good time of the day to you. I'm Liana Antonovich. My channel is about equestrian training strategies. In the previous videos, we discussed the 4 elements of what the sport horse training plan defines and manages. First, needed activity volume in a lifespan across career stages. Second, workloads in a mix. Third, daily activity stack. And fourth, weekly training schedule. That is halfway through. I very much appreciate your perseverance. If you got to sprints here with me, you're likely dedicated to your horses. Video 5 is about sprints. Some coaches call them the training waves. This video on sprints has been created with a consultation of Yakov Borisovich Shedrovitsky, FAI level eventing athlete and coach from the former USSR and Republic of Belarus, and currently residing in the City of God, Israel, and Susan and Dennis Summers, who are world-level seasoned 100 miles endurance athletes and mentors, currently residing in the United States. Susan and Dennis Summers are also authors of the book Fourth Gear, Power Up Your Endurance Horse. Link to the book is available in the notes section to this video on YouTube. Sprints are calendar periods of gradual, steady increase in activity volume and/or intensity. There are cycles of building up activity volume and intensity, followed by relaxation and downtime. Dennis and Susan Summers refer to sprints in their book, Fourth Gear, on endurance training as fitness training waves. Yakov Borisovich Shedrovitsky, along with other trainers and coaches in Eurasia, call these training waves as sprints. Sprints can be 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5, and 6 weeks long. Sprints can become longer with time if we build up activity volume while staying at the same intensity. That's the principle of extending these sprints, how many weeks we can fit in one sprint. Consecutive sprints can be the same in length, in the number of weeks, or may even shorten if we focus on achieving higher intensity. The last sprint before competitions is usually the longest to help bring a horse to competition arena, in the best shape possible. On this chart, we can see example of for one workload over 12 weeks, split into 4 sprints, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and again 4 weeks sprint, with a planned last week of full rest on week 2 and week 13. Weeks 5 and 9 are still training weeks, but with more relaxation, so this is also an option in planning. The constructive element of a sprint is calendar week. It is our weekly schedule we have just discussed in the video 4 of this series. It is vitally important to place weekdays vertically: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then stack days of week in a row so that we could see the training waves in a familiar to our eyes horizontal wave. Each day represents a DS, daily activity stack, with specified workloads mix, mounted and unmounted. Different workload mixes, in our case, we can see workload 1, workload 2, daily stack 1, daily stack 2, daily stack 3. So workloads are balanced within daily activity stack. It can be one workload per day or a combination, a mix of 2 or more workload types in one session or in split sessions. Daily activity stack and weekly schedule help us normalize them. Sprint is a training block of a few weeks. A few sprints represent a training phase. A training phase can be lesser or bigger than a calendar year. A typical training phase is 9 months, although it can be shorter or longer. We talked about the training phase in the first videos of this series. We will talk about the annual plan and how to effectively fit in the sprints in the calendar year in my next video of this series. Second to last week of sprint can have the highest intensity in all workloads for the weekly schedule. For a 2-week sprint, it's the first week that has the highest intensity. For a 3-week sprint, it's the middle week. For a 4-week sprint, it's the 3rd week. The last week in a sprint is a relaxation and or full downtime. Workloads are threaded, as you can see, into this canvas in horizontal threads. One can see how each workload thread represents a training wave. Workload types can repeat in the weekly schedule, but ideally not more than twice per week. So if it is dressage, then practicing dressage in a dressage arena not more than twice per week. If it is a jumping session, then it is not jumping not more than twice per week. Mounted and unmounted workloads and recreation days must be balanced both vertically within a weekly schedule and horizontally across sprints in a training wave. Intensity can grow sequentially in repeat workloads. So, for example, if we have cardio work on Tuesdays and Fridays, then we can add up training time for gallop, canter, or gallop bursts sequentially. Tuesday, then some slightly more Friday, then slightly more again Tuesday next week, again Friday that week, again slightly more next week on Tuesday. So the wave goes in a zigzag. We increase or decrease the minutes of the gallop burst following the zigzag pattern. The pink cells represent the days with the highest activity at this level of intensity, which is first week and the first 2-week sprint. Highest level is on Friday. In the next 3-week sprint, highest level is 2nd week again on Friday. 4th week sprint, 3rd week, Friday, 30 minutes. The last 4-week sprint, it's again Friday of the 3rd week, 35 minutes. We can see following these pink peaks, these are the highest numbers, the peaking numbers of performance, how the wave increases, the top of the wave increases. But the last week in each sprint on Friday goes down to 0. But in this example, it's not an abrupt from 12 to 0. It goes through 5, which is somewhat a middle, a half, about 50 to 60% of 12. In the next 3 weeks sprint, 10 is half of 20. 10 on Tuesday is half of the peaking Friday. Next sprint, 4 weeks, 16 is a half of 30. And then 4 weeks sprint, 20 is about a half of 35. So intensity can grow sequentially in repeat workloads. Last instance of n-1 week of sprint holds the highest intensity. Workload's intensity growth can be fully synchronized across all workloads on all days in the week, or 1 or 2 of them can be slightly shifted. In this example, we can see that the dressage training waves are slightly shifted by 1 week in their peak, thus allowing to normalize, to balance the weekly intensity and activity volume on the week of highest performance. We see that if it would be all peaks on all week, it would be hard for the horse, but if peaks for different workloads are slightly shifted, it makes it easier for the horse during the peak week. But this shift is slight, so not to disrupt the total principle of the sprint wave. When we plan the sprints, we do a horizontal check. We do a horizontal check throughout all threads. We place in each sprint on a training wave and in sprints as waves pattern. It must go slow and easy in early sprints and developing more capacity in later sprints. So when we take a training phase, we go slow and easy in early sprints and we develop more capacity in later sprints. That is a horizontal check. Workloads can serve as a substitute entry or substitute exit sessions in a sprint to each other. For example, hacking on the roads is a good entry session for cardio work thread in the fields or on a training track. Another example, somewhat feeling loosely the distance in the fields is a good exit out of a sprint on a last week for a stadium jumping workload thread at the end of the sprint, week end. Another example, free jumping in a chute is a good entry on week 1 of sprint in the show jumping thread. Yeah, makes sense. So they're somewhat they can be applied somewhat interchangeably. The next check is a vertical check, place of the workload in the weekly schedule. We allocate 2, 3, 4, 5 mounted days in a week for a horse, depending on its age and level of training. We check the number of days of break, of downtime for recovery. If it is enough, keeping daily activity volume in mind. And when we want to use fresh mind of a horse versus the horse has lots of energy. Workloads can be shifted up and down in the weekly schedule. They do not have to exactly follow the horizontal row of the thread. That's an important note. Workloads can be shifted up or down the weekly schedule to accommodate recovery, weather, and weekly training wave. Berator alert, summary about sprints. So sprints are calendar periods of gradual, steady increase in activity volume or intensity. They're cycles of building up activity volume and intensity followed by relaxation. Sprints can be 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5, and 6 weeks long. The constructive element of a sprint is calendar week. It is our weekly schedule we have just discussed in the early videos of this series. Sprints can become longer with time if we build up activity volume while staying at the same intensity. Consecutive sprints can be the same in length or can even shorten if we focus on achieving higher intensity, much higher intensity as we progress. The last sprint before competitions is usually the longest to help bring a horse to a competition arena in the best or a distance in the best shape possible. Sprints are the training waves that apply not only to cardio work that racing horses or endurance horses would naturally be expected to be subjected to. Sprints are the training waves that apply to all unmounted and mounted workloads. What are variables? Variables examples are for cardio work. Let's say it's endurance, cross-country, long distance. It's mileage, it's walk-trot canter patterns on a distance for how the horse goes, how the horse takes the distance. It's pace, speed, duration of each walk-trot canter element in a pattern, heart rate, breathing rate, sweat patterns, warm-up time, recovery time, footing conditions, landscape, water, hills, steepness, etc. For cardio work and flat racing, it's cross-country, short distance, or flat racing on a track. It's time, number of meters, pace, speed, working canter stride length, gallop stride length, which lead the horse takes, balance, beats per minute, gallop pattern in a race cross, heart rate, breathing rate, sweat patterns, warm-up time, recovery time, footing conditions. Jumping has its own plethora of variables, and it relates to gymnastics, stadium, jumping, or eventing. And it goes again, it's a distance, it's number of rounds, it's exercise and course complexity, height, obviously, related distance, number of strides, turns, time, speed on course, etc., etc. There are sprints also in dressage, lunging, free lunging or jump shoot, work in hand, etc. For dressage, we follow the dressage training pyramid. It's time, it's number of exercise blueprints, repeats, balance, impulsion, quality of gait, speed, BPM, regularity and modifications, exercise complexity, speed of response, sweat patterns, recovery time. Lunging, even lunging with side reins or on a lunge, it also follows the wave. We plan much lesser lunging time at the beginning, or if our first week is essentially lunging is the main workload, then we can have a longer lunging within the horse's capability and reduce lunging later in the next weeks. Or we also, on the weeks 1 and 2 of the sprint, we go easy with lunging and we allow greater lunging bursts, more activity, more complexity in transitions, etc. different way to attach side reins in the later weeks in the spring. So we can a little bit shift and play. Again, fitting, vertical check, horizontal check. Even work in hand has its own variables, whether we do it on halter, on a bridle, double bridle, or long lines. For a horse, both from physical point of view as well as from mental, from learning point of view, everything needs to be in a progression. And we start from easy exercises, we develop them to some volume, to some, we challenge horse's capacity, but then we need to bring it back. We do not demand, even on a halter, even on a rope halter, we do not demand the same things from a horse every day. If we do, we make them dull, non-responsive, and resistant. This is another benefit of sprints. It helps maintain not only and develop not only the horse body, but also horse's mind, keeping it fresh, developing but not burned. So homework. Take Excel workbook or a large sheet of paper and record your past 3-4 months of training activity. Remember, weekdays in rows, weeks and months in columns, so that you could see how the training waves go horizontally. See if you find any patterns. What drives your decisions for workloads or for your horse? Do you notice any highlights or lowlights in the training flow? On a new Excel worksheet or a large piece of paper, try to draw your plan for the next 3-4 months. Which principles did you apply? How? Are you going to do anything differently from the past as a result of the horizontal and vertical checks? Leave your comments below the video. Send email to equestriancoach@outlook.com. Ask any questions. I'll respond to them as I can. Thank you.